Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For cables, connectors, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by the Ham Station. Get your new radio or antenna by calling 800-729-4373 or go to hamstation.com.
It's Ham Radio.
Good evening, everyone. It's time for Ham Talk Live. Yeah, it really is. And it's Wednesday, and it's 8 o'clock, and that's not normal, but it's just for this week. But it is time for another episode of Ham Talk Live. It's number 53, Heard Island DXpedition and Science Research with Dr. Bill Mitchell, AE0EE. Recorded live Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight we're joined by Dr. Bill Mitchell, AE0EE, who went on the Heard Island DXpedition and also did scientific research while he was there. So we're going to talk a little bit about the DXpedition, but we're going to talk some science tonight. And we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week, Fred Regeniter, K4IU, was here to talk about DXing and operating from the Canal Zone and other countries. And if you missed the show, you can listen anytime at hamtalklive.com or on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And yeah, tonight we're coming to you a day and an hour earlier because I have to announce a basketball game tomorrow night at school, and it only happens once every other year on Thursday, and so I have to be there for that. So we moved the show up a day and up an hour so we don't conflict with the Ham Nation people. We'll be done in plenty of time if you want to switch over and watch that live. So next week we'll be back on our usual Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern schedule. Tonight also marks the beginning of year number 2 for Ham Talk Live. So thanks again to everyone for listening and participating. And tell your friends about it. Don't be shy when it comes time to call into the show. We'd love to have you participate. So get your questions ready to go after the introduction. You can call us. The telephone number that you'll call whenever we get to that point is 812-NETS-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Or you can call us on Skype. Just look for Ham Talk Live on Skype. You can also send questions via Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @HamTalkLive, so you can tweet us there, and I will get those and pass those along to Bill. So I'll be back with Bill right after this word from Tower Electronics right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you in part by Tower Electronics. Tower Electronics has been the Ham's dime store since 1978. When you need connectors, mobile and handheld antennas, cables, or adapters, visit Scott or Jill at a Hamfest near you. Or you can order online at pl-259.com or call 920-435-2973. Stock up on those supplies like PL259 and N connectors, SMA adapters, audio cables, soldering supplies, mobile antennas, and ham sticks. Their silver-plated N connectors are even used on the International Space Station. Tower Electronics carries MFJ, Comet, Daiwa, OPEC, Workman, and Ham Pro products. And don't miss their 0% off sale going on now. Tower Electronics, online at pl-259.com, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Your host, Neil Rapp, would tell you a chemistry joke, but he probably wouldn't get a reaction. Now, more Ham Talk Live.
Thanks to Scott and Jill at Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show tonight to help bring you Ham Talk Live. They'll be at the Dalton, Georgia Ham Fest on Saturday, and they'll be in Cave City, Kentucky next Saturday, or you can give them a call at 920-435-2973 or visit their website at pl-259.com. Tell them you heard it on Ham Talk Live. Ham Talk Live is on the air every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here on hamtalklive.com. And if you missed the show, you can listen to the archive on the website or download it from most popular podcasting websites. Dr. Bill Mitchell, AE0EE, was a radio operator on the VK0EK Heard Island DXpedition during March and April of 2016. He was originally licensed in December of 2012 in California as AG6RB, and then took the call sign AE0EE in July of 2014. Bill is most often found on HF and enjoys a mix of CW and sideband, occasionally some digital mode, satellite, and meteor scatter. And for the first 18 months after he was licensed, he primarily operated the club station W6BB at the University of California, Berkeley. Because he lives in an apartment, he does a lot of portable operations. And when not on the radio, Bill enjoys doing and teaching science. He has a BA in chemistry from Carleton College and a PhD in chemistry from UC Berkeley. And while his primary focus is physical and analytical chemistry, his research has been broad, spanning from organometallic synthesis, kinetics, polymers, to photon photochemistry, atmospheric chemistry and physics, geochemistry and geology, and his dissertation focused on high-precision uranium-lead dating. And the scary thing is, I know what all that meant. So, good evening, Bill. Thank you for coming on the show.
Good evening. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on the anniversary of the show.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and that's why I started doing it. So hopefully it'll keep being that way and keep on going. Well, we want you to talk about Heard Island tonight, which it's not quite been a year since that happened. And tell us a little bit about the trip and what you hope to accomplish by going on the expedition.
Sure. Thanks, Neil. So I learned about the expedition about 3 years ago and went to my local amateur radio club meeting at the urging of one of my mentors at the time, and the expedition leader for Heard Island was talking about a expedition to Clipperton Island that he'd made previously, and started talking about how he wanted to go to Heard Island, and he talked about the volcano there that was covered in glaciers, and at that he'd already gotten my attention. He said something about 4 species of penguins that live on the island, and that really got going. And then he said, and it's also one of the top 10 most wanted territories on Earth for amateur radio. And I said, well, that sounds good too. So, thought long and hard about whether I wanted to, was able to join, and after about a year of deliberation, ended up saying, yes, I really want to do this. So it was a big undertaking. Heard Island, for those of you who aren't aware, is a sub-Antarctic island in the extreme southern Indian Ocean, about halfway between South Africa and Australia, but quite a bit further south. It was a 12-day voyage at sea to get to the island from Cape Town, and then another 10 days after we left to continue on to Fremantle and Perth in Western Australia. So there were a lot of different scientific things to do while we were on the expedition. One of the ones that I got into as an amateur birder is looking at some of the Southern Ocean seabirds. I've participated in the eBird citizen science project, where birders will go out, they'll observe and count how many birds of different species they find, and then they'll submit their logs into a centralized database that's used for doing population research. It's similar to the amateur radio logbook of the world, except it's for birds. We also deployed some buoys, both surface drifting and some diving buoys, for getting a number of different parameters from the ocean. I took high-resolution panoramic images of some of the geologic features on the island. We sampled rocks and soil and water for a number of environmental science projects. And we also did a little bit of study of some high-frequency electromagnetic propagation, which is what a lot of people contributed financial support to have us do. So that's a little bit of some of the science that we did.
And get a few QSLs sent out afterwards.
Yeah, there were a few postcards to send confirming contact expedition. That's true.
Yeah, just a few. Well, I teach chemistry for a living, and while physical chemistry still haunts me, analytical chemistry was something that I really got into because there were so many connections with ham radio. Because using waves to analyze chemicals just made total sense to me, and so when we got to the electronics part, I was like, yeah, I know this stuff. This is great stuff, and did some research on some NMR and things like that. But most people listening tonight probably aren't chemists, so while I want to get into that a little bit, why don't you explain a little bit about some of the analysis that you've been able to do with the samples that you brought back from Heard Island?
Okay. Well, I've actually been relatively removed from the samples that were brought back, but I do know that one of the projects that was being worked on is figuring out how old some of the lava flows are on Heard Island. Many of the researchers and geologists who've been to the island previously have remarked that the flows look recent. And even for a geologist, recent is a pretty broad definition. For people who study really old things, 1 million years might be really recent. It might even be older than millions or millions of years that people would consider recent. So because so many scientists have remarked on how it looks recent, but we have absolutely no numbers for recent, one of our goals was to collect some samples that could be used to actually determine an age for those recent lava flows, which are expected to be somewhere around 10,000 years or maybe younger. And the way that ends up getting done is that the scientists will look for cosmogenic isotopes in the rock. So elements with a specific number of protons and neutrons in them that have come because of cosmic radiation hitting that rock. When the lava flow comes out and they're exposed at the surface, that radiation can cause these changes in the rock, and we can then bring that back to the lab and measure it. And so we grabbed a bunch of samples, and those are now in Tasmania under analysis.
Very good. And you mentioned the bird logbook, if you will, on that. What about the buoys and some of the studies from the RF that was being generated there? Tell us a little bit about what analysis has been done on that and any of your findings that you've been able to get so far.
Sure. So we deployed two types of buoys from the ship because there's a lot of open ocean in the Southern Ocean that isn't very well monitored. It's not like on land where we have lots of weather stations. Out in the open ocean, there's not much going on. So in order to help weather forecasting and understanding how ocean circulation works, we deployed two different types of buoys. One type is a surface buoy from NOAA, and those track the sea surface temperature, and they also send their position back via a satellite link. And so those are used to monitor the surface currents in the oceans around the world. And some of our buoys have moved, I think, upwards of 2,500 miles from when we left them in the water. The other type of buoy that we have are what are called Argo buoys, which are diving buoys. They spend most of their time about 1 kilometer under the water surface, drifting along. But every 10 days, they'll drop down to 2,000 meters depth, and they'll then measure the conductivity, the temperature, and the depth all the way up to the surface. And that allows researchers some insights into how the temperature and salinity change in sort of a three-dimensional view over the ocean. Originally, that was of particular importance for hiding submarines, but it's also useful to see where water is mixing, how the oceans are changing in our current climate. And I have a little bit of information on some of those Argo diving buoys posted on my blog, inquisitiveRockhopper.wordpress.com.
Very good, and we'll send that out, a link to that too, so people can find that easily. And then the RF.
Yeah, the RF was a fun part. It's incredible being at the far end of a very wanted territory. There were a lot of people who wanted to make contacts with us. We made over 75,000 contacts on both on voice, mostly on Morse code, and a few on radio teletype. And that was with all continents of the world. We even had one contact with one of the Antarctic research bases, which was a fun contact to make. We ended up having both our expedition leader and the station manager of that station having a short conversation with each other, which was pretty memorable.
Very good. Good deal. So how did you find time to do all the research and keep up with your shifts on the DXpedition and keep everything running?
Yeah, well, I didn't get a lot of sleep is the short answer. But the longer answer is that it was possible because we spent months and years planning for the expedition. So I joined about 18 months before we departed. So I joined in September of 2014. And even by that time, I'd been thinking about it and reading about it for the better part of a year. After that additional 18 months of planning and research, much of the expedition was choreographed and prioritized. So we had procedures written out that even a tired, frustrated expedition member could carry out, and they could use the checklist so that they would get things done right and get things done efficiently, because you don't want to waste time dealing with stupid problems that if you would manage to do if you were more awake, or if you, and we didn't want to have to think about anything that we didn't need to have to think about on the island. And it was a challenge at times to get everything done. We did have to sort of prioritize which things get done and which things don't. And I would have loved to do more of the Gigapan images and to get more birding in on the island and take more pictures. But there were only so many hours in the day, and the generators needed refilling, and the antennas needed to be kept up. And I also was part of the social media team, keeping things going with social media and keeping in touch with the mission control team back in the Bay Area. We had, as part of the permitting process, we had to provide daily reports to the Australian Antarctic Division, who is the permitting authority, to let them know how we were doing and what we were up to. And so all of those things took time, but when you're out there, it's a real rush to be there, and so you want to stay awake for a lot of it, but get sleep when you need to, so that you can actually function well.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a challenge, and actually, it's bringing to mind what I kind of envisioned for a lot of the outer space missions. That everything's on a checklist and everything's kind of set and ready to go, so that you do just the minimal amount of deployment that you can do to make sure you get everything and get it safely back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you typically have a lot of time before the expedition goes, and that's when you need to make sure that you have plans for what are you going to do? What are you going to do when Plan A doesn't work or when something fails? Who's going to be doing what? What are the likely scenarios you're going to encounter? Everything that you can document or go through beforehand, you want to make sure is done and is dealt with. Because, again, you don't want to expend any more energy on things while you're out in the field than you need to. So the more you can plan ahead of time, the more that you can put the work of the expedition into the planning side rather than on island, the more time that you have to do the science and to the documentation that you want to do.
All excellent and interesting stuff, and so we're going to give the listeners a chance to ask some questions here in just a little bit. So I'll be back to take your calls after this message from the Ham Station right here on Ham Talk Live.
This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by the Ham Station. For over 37 years, the Ham Station has sold new and used radios, antennas, accessories, and equipment to hams everywhere. Give Dan or Jeff a call at 800-729-4373 or order online at hamstation.com. Ham Station carries all the major brands like ICOM, Yaesu, and Kenwood, and they have a wide selection of of radio scanners, MFJ accessories, Heil sound products, amplifiers by Mirage and Ameritron, Cushcraft antennas, and more. Easy online ordering is at hamstation.com or call 1-800-729-4373 to place an order and talk it over with the experts. The Ham Station, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Oh, yeah. You're talking ham radio, baby. You're listening to Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Join the conversation. Call us on voice with Skype at Ham Talk Live or give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Now, here's more Ham Talk Live.
All right, thanks to the Ham Station, they have you covered for both new and even used equipment, and you can try it out right there. Give Dan or Jeff a call at 800-729-4373 or go to hamstation.com. Tell them you heard it on Ham Talk Live. And also a reminder that we're going to be doing our live audience show again on Hamvention Eve. That's going to be at the Spring Hill Suites, Dayton, South Miamisburg. And they still have a few rooms remaining. So if you haven't made a hotel reservation for Hamvention this year, you can reserve your rooms now at Marriott.com or call 888-850-6391. Spring Hill Suites, Dayton, South Miamisburg is the Hamvention home for Ham Talk Live. Be sure to listen to Ham Talk Live at our normal time. That's Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here on hamtalklive.com. And check out our Facebook page and our Twitter feed. Just search for Ham Talk Live. So it's time for your calls. If you have a question for Bill, give us a call right now at 812-NET-HAM1, 812-638-4261, or you can Skype us. Our account there is at Ham Talk Live, and you can tweet us at Ham Talk Live, and I think Bill even made up a hashtag of Heard Questions, so you can get us that way too. So if you have a question about any of the science or any of the DXpedition stuff from Heard Island, give us a call. 812-NET-HAM1 is the number. So while we're waiting to see if we have any callers that know that we're on a day early here, tell us a little bit about some of the environmental restrictions, some of the concerns that you had going into Heard Island that, they don't want the environment disrupted any more than necessary. Tell us a little bit about the concerns and some of those restrictions for going there and living there for a couple of weeks and taking the samples.
Sure. Well, Heard Island is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is designated that way both for its unique geology, being a hotspot type volcanic island at a place that may have some remnant continental crusts underneath it, and also for its unique ecosystem. Heard Island, unlike all of the other subantarctic islands, was never infested with any sort of human-introduced species, at least not that anybody is aware of. There are some grasses that have probably been introduced from Kerguelen Island that may have been brought over by birds, so there are some potentially invasive species on island, and we had to take special precaution and had special permitting requirements around that. It's also an IUCN strict nature reserve, and that means that there is a lot that's being done. There's a very detailed plan about the management of the island. And so it has, this management plan talks about what biosecurity requirements you need to have in order to access the island. So in order to get on the island, you need to have a rodent-free ship and it needs to be certified rodent-free. You need to use various measures to make sure that there are no rodents to be introduced. You need to have traps set up both on the island and on the ship. They need to be monitored. You also have to clean off everything needs to be thoroughly cleaned before it goes on the island. Boots need to be cleaned, the tents had to be cleaned, all the gear had to be either new or pristine, and there were thorough inspections as we were loading the ship to make sure that everything was going to be clean and that the environment would not be at risk from our expedition. Once you get there, it's a leave-no-trace situation, and that goes all the way to packing out solid wastes. So all solid waste gets packed out. Liquid waste of certain types can be disposed of below the high tide line, but generally everything got put back into containers and brought back to the ship for transport on to Australia. So it was challenging to meet those protections, but when you think about how important scientifically that ecosystem is, all of those protections are quite reasonable, and it's in line with the sort of protections that are in place in Antarctica and other high-value ecosystems.
Very good. 812-NET-HAM1 is the phone number, 812-638-4261. If you have a question, give us a call or give us a Skype call or a tweet. Just look for Ham Talk Live. What was your favorite part of the trip?
Well, there were a lot of favorite parts of the trip. One of the favorite radio moments came in the first couple days. The first day that we were on the island, we set up the tents, we set up a few of the antennas, we put the camp together, and then went to bed exhausted. Although even though we were exhausted, we still had, each of us had a 1-hour radio shift through the night. So we were on the radio 24 or all hours through that first night. The next day, we were working on putting up more antennas, since all of our antennas were good only at night. So we put up more antennas, and late in the afternoon, it was time to get back on the air on the lower bands again. And so I managed to be the person to get on the air, and I was a little bit daunted by that as one of the less experienced amateur radio operators, knowing that I would be coming up against a very, very busy time. So I sat down in the chair, got all set up, called who wants to come talk to Heard Island, and on the very first call, I get a response from Kilo 6 Sierra Romeo Zulu, and get him in the log right away. And it was kind of funny because not only did I get a response on the very first call from a nice loud station, but I actually know Dr. Eshelman from my time in Berkeley. And I found out later that evening after my shift was over that it turned out that was the last of the 340 countries and territories around the world that he was looking for to get the complete set. So it was fun that my first contact of the day and was then on the first call was someone that I knew, and for his last of the 340 territories.
Very nice, very nice. What are some of the other favorite moments there?
Well, it was also kind of fun while we were on the ship. we had quite a bit of time to sit and watch the scenery. And one morning, I got up and we were welcome to go onto the bridge to see what was going on and spend time with the officer of the watch up there. So I went up and one morning just to see what was going on and was told, "Oh, we've got some dolphins off of our bow." So I got to go out on deck and take a look, as these dolphins were just playing around right in our bow wave, just inches from the ship. So it was fun to see those. It was also a lot of fun to see these new to me seabirds, and it made me feel it was a very tough time identifying the birds, because as a Minnesota and California resident, I was not familiar with my Southern Ocean seabirds. Albatrosses were completely new to me, and so it was a challenge looking at the birds and trying to pick out the distinguishing marks, particularly given that some of the Southern Ocean seabirds are known for being very difficult to distinguish, sometimes even difficult to distinguish if you have them right there in your hand, which I didn't. They like to move quickly and stay just far enough away from the camera to make it hard to get pictures of them.
812-NET-HAM1 is the phone number, 812-638-4261. And we'll keep on talking here while we're waiting for your calls. So go ahead and give us a call whenever you want, and we'll get you in here. Now tell us a little bit about your blog and some of the data. We've mentioned a little bit of some of the things that are available there on your blog. So talk a little bit about some of this data that's openly available for people to see on there. Sure.
So one of the purposes of the blog that I have, and that's inquisitiverockhopper.wordpress.com, one of the purposes is to help me make sure that I do the reading to know what's going on Heard Island, but then I try and share that with my readers, as well as looking at some of the current events that are visible by satellite on Heard Island. So earlier this month, on February 4th, Landsat 8, which is one of the U.S. Earth-observing satellites, flew over Heard Island and was taking images in a number of different wavelengths or colors, and I've been watching these images for quite a while. I took a look at this one, and it was really incredible because we had in the image some visible lava or debris flows at the summit of the volcano. And when I looked at the infrared bands, it was clear that there was at least an active eruption, or there was at least hot material at the surface near the summit, and also what I interpret as a active lava flow at the time as this satellite flew over. So that was a really interesting thing to see, and I've been looking at some of that, as well as sharing a little bit about how to find the images and how to process the images using some software called QGIS, which is pretty neat. I also did a little bit of modeling of an interesting problem with some of the seabirds. I'd taken pictures of I had 4 or 5 pictures of birds that I'd taken from a flock of about 40. And it was expected to be a mixed species flock, and all 4 of the photos were of one species, and I wanted to, which was expected to be the less frequent species. So I wanted to know how many of those could I statistically say were in the were in that flock, and ended up doing some computer modeling to figure out how many I could definitively say, or at least justifiably say, were in that. And it was about half of them. And I guess I would also be remiss to point out that some of what I've talked about on the blog and I talk about on Twitter is, of course, the gratuitous penguin pictures. There are 4 different species of penguins that breed on Heard Island. King penguins, gentoo penguins, macaroni penguins, though I feel like if they had a radio microphone or a Morse code key in their hand, they might be a Marconi penguin.
There we go.
And my personal favorite, the southern rockhopper penguin. So all 4 of those breed on the island, and we were able to find penguins of each of those species. The rockhoppers were a little bit tricky to find because they like to stay on, well, pretty rocky places and in lava tubes, and in places that humans have trouble getting to, either because it's just physically difficult to access, or because much of the island has significant protections. So even though we were a scientific expedition, there were a number of places that the permit said, you are not to go here because there are lava tubes that might be underfoot that could collapse, or there are sensitive bird areas, and the scientific activities that you've proposed don't require you to be there, so don't go there.
Yeah, very good. And we just tweeted out the link to the blog that you're mentioning, the inquisitiverockhopper.wordpress.com, and I'll get that out on Facebook here right after the show. But that's on Twitter right now, so you can go take a look at that at your leisure. And we're just about out of time here, so any closing thoughts you want to get in? We've got about a minute left.
All right. Yeah. Well, this was really a wonderful expedition to be part of. It was great to have so much support from the community throughout the process, both at the front end and then while we were on island. And then it was fun hearing from folks even on the radio as we were on the ship on the way home. Made a few contacts there and had a lot of people who were clearly looking out for us. So it was really wonderful to be part of the expedition, and it's been a great time learning about the science and history of Heard Island. So thanks, Neil, for the invitation to be here on the show.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate you sharing all the science behind the Heard Island DXpedition and a little bit about the operations as well, and hope that you'll continue sharing some of that stuff, and we'll be looking for that on your blog.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks very much.
All right. That is Dr. Bill Mitchell, AE0EE, and that is a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. Thanks to Dr. Bill Mitchell, AE0EE, and everyone out there in cyberspace for listening. And we invite you back at our usual time next week, Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And our guest is going to be Michael Coulter, W8CI. He's the spokesperson for the Dayton Hamvention, and he's going to be here to update us on all the new things happening with the new site of the Dayton Hamvention, and some of the things that have happened even just this week. Some of the online functions have come on, and they're making some moves. So we'll get the official word from him next week, and you can call in and ask your questions right here at 812-NET-HAM1. And may have some other folks from DARA with him as well. We're still trying to work that out, but we know that Michael's going to be here, and then they'll be back on again a little before the Hamvention to fill us in on everything. So We look forward to that next week, and we'll be back at our usual Thursday at 9 p.m. For a list of all of our upcoming guests, be sure to visit hamtalklive.com. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.
Seven three and good luck from Ham Talk Live.